Alright, so now we are in Maya, and then let's continue working on the terrain. So first thing, let me minimize Maya here, and then go to this forest folder. So here's the terrain that we just created in SketchUp. So now it's outside in our folder. So let me change this to list, and then let's expand this folder, and then I just want to move those two in that asset folder. So this terrain now, it's including in a asset folder inside Maya. So this way we start to organize the things we want. And then let's go back to Maya, and then let's import this terrain. So let's go File, Import. We are inside our project, so perfect. Let's click on Assets, and then select this terrain, and then click Import. Okay, so now imported, and you can see this is really like a real scale, so it's really big, and it looks pretty good. So if we go back to this folder inside assets, and then if you expand this terrain folder, you're gonna see this texture get exported with it as well. But we're not gonna use this texture because it's not relevant to us. We're just gonna use the terrain itself for our file. So that's really good. If you press 6, you're gonna get the texture. So if you're doing a recording that you need just the terrain itself without any modification, like some kind of videos they do, like mining videos, or videos that just do fly-throughs. Sometimes you can use this terrain just to do that, and without doing any additional thing. But for now, we just keep this as it is. We're not gonna touch the texture. We're not gonna use this texture at all. This is just for you guys to check that you can actually have the texture as well in the 3D model. So then let's save as version 001. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is let's retexture this ground so we make it more suitable for our animation and modeling. So first I'm gonna show you guys the texture files that we're gonna be using, and you're gonna have access to all these as well. So let's open this ground texture, and then we're gonna have 3 files that we're gonna be using. So first is you get a bump map that we're gonna be using, and then you get this dirt ground. Just a simple dirt, we're gonna be using on top of this grass ground as well. So you can see there's a difference in size, but that doesn't really matter in our case, and in general you don't need to worry too much about everything having equal size. So now let's minimize this folder, and then let's start creating the texture for this model. So first let's go to the Hypershade. Okay, and then let's click on Arnold, and then let's go to the Arnold AI standard surface. So this is basically the texture we're gonna be using. So let's expand Arnold so this way we can focus more here, and then let's start importing these files. So first, before we actually import any of these files, let's create a Maya layered texture, because we're gonna be overlapping these images on top of each other and create like a nice mix of different variation, because you don't want to have just grass or dirt into that terrain, because that's not gonna look very unique. Because if you look at the satellite photo, you can see there's a variation between like like dirt and then grass and trees. Like there's a variation that you can kind of see, and we're gonna have like something similar here applied. Okay, so let's go and then select the layer texture here. Let's keep scrolling until layer texture. And then the next thing we need to do is click on this layer texture here, and then you can see here this slot. We're gonna use it to apply a texture here. So let's click on this color, and then let's create a file, and then from this file let's click on let's see the texture of the grass first. Let's do them in order. Okay, so let's select these files together, and then let's put them here. Just reorganize things so this way we can easily see. So this, let's name it grass, so this way we can keep track of what's going on. And then let's click on this layer texture, and then let's click on another, just click beside it, and you're gonna have another one. So this color, let's click the same thing, and then let's click on the file, and then let's put the dirt ground, and then let's name this dirt. Okay, so let's reorganize. Maya somehow like to spread things apart. Okay, so we have those two now completely different textures. And then let's select this ground here, and then let's assign this surface shader to it. The standard surface, and now we can't see anything because we need to connect this out color into the base color. So let's press 6, and you can see already the texture is loading here, and you can see the grass here. So that's good. It's a good start. Now it's way too big and it doesn't look anything near realistic or like cinematic, so we don't want to have that. So what we're gonna do is click on this layer texture, and then you can see here this blending mode. This is gonna determine basically how we're gonna blend between these two texture maps. So let me just scale this down a little bit, and then if I change this to for example like add, you can see that how it's changed how these guys blending together. So if you just go through them, you're gonna have all kind of weird interesting stuff. So, but we don't want to use this method because that's gonna be not very predictable for us. So we're gonna keep it over. And then the most important thing, you want to make sure the grass is selected and not the dirt. So let's select the grass. And then with this alpha channel, we're gonna use this as creating like some kind of nice mix. So let's click on it. And this fractor, this is the first thing we can select. And you can see instantly we get a nice variation between the ground and the grass. So that's pretty good. So now, important thing is let me minimize this, and then let's have a nice scale representation, because now we want to make sure these mountains are really big and like accurate. So it's usually the size we capture from SketchUp is like 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. But this, let's change that actually to ground. Let's rename it while we already selecting it, so it's not mesh anymore. Okay, and then let's start checking the size. Like we want to make sure like how big is this, right? So if we can create polygon cube, and then let's zoom in here. So this is 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. And how do we know it's 1 centimeter? If you go to the settings in Maya, under the settings here, and then you can look at the working unit, and it's saying it's in centimeter. So now everything here is in centimeter. So let's put an average height person, which is 180 centimeter. And let's move this up like this, so you can see this ground actually pretty small comparing to an average height person. So we want to scale this up. So let's create another cube, and this time let's scale this cube, make it like 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. So 1 meter have 100 centimeters. So let's get the calculator. And then this way we can just quickly calculate. It could be like 10,000 centimeter, but let's see. So we want 1 kilometer, which is 1,000 meter. So 1,000 meter multiply 100. So that's 100,000 centimeter. So 100,000 centimeter, that's gonna be our size we're gonna use for this new cube. So we don't want to change the Y much. We can change this to this is, let's say, so this is 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. Let's copy this and then put it here, so my camera can't see anything anymore. So let's select the camera here, and let's go to this near clip frame and change it to 1. Near clip plane, sorry, not frame. And then like add a couple of zeros here, and then press. And it's just having a bit hard time. So this is the size. My graphics card might be having issue, but that's okay. Let's select the ground and let's quickly scale it to be something around this. You know, it doesn't have to be like perfect, but something around this size will be like the more accurate size. So this should be good. So let's just hide this cube for now. Let's go to display, just click on this icon, and then let's hide it. Okay, so let's go back to our guy. So a person walking in these mountains, the size of him will be something like this. So this looks pretty reasonable. Because don't forget, if we have that the texture back, if we can apply this again here, and you're gonna see like the tree. These dots here are all trees. So this is kind of like a tree, bunch of trees. So our guy is kind of like matching similar to this big mountain, 1 kilometer area. So we're good here. So now we kind of got the correct sizing. So let's assign this material back. So now once we have the correct sizing, so we can know that this texture now is really big, because you can see these rocks and these leaves. These leaves are huge. So we don't want to have like this imbalanced sizing. So let's change that. Let me rename this like a human, and let's delete this one. We don't need it anymore. So this is a human, our guy, just for reference. He's super thin, but that's okay. Let's move back into here in Maya Hypershade, and then let's start first scaling these UVs. So now let me scale this up a little bit, just trying to balance between those two, the terrain and the texture. So let's go to this grass, and then let's select this UVs, and then let's start changing these settings, in the UV map. So we don't want to make it too much, because then it's gonna become really ugly. So let's go something like 30 and 30. Okay, so we scaled down the grass. Let's do the same. Let's do the same thing for the ground. Let's change this to, let's say 30. If we make it equal 30. So now let's see. Let's go back to our guy. And where is he? So from his point of view, so it's still big. These textures are pretty big comparing to this guy, 180. So we can go more. And so here's the thing we need to think about. It's like how much more we're gonna go. Since we're gonna be flying, it's okay if we did cheat the ground a little bit. Since we don't have like a humans actually, or any reference for like size, we could cheat a little bit with the texture. So before we start adding more, creating more UV tiling, let's start creating with the mix, adjusting the mix between these textures to make it first look more natural and nice, and then we start playing with this UVs. Okay, so with that said, because now you can see how everything repeating like too much, and it doesn't look that good at all. So let's start playing with this fractal now. So let me select the fractal, and then let's start playing with these settings. Meanwhile, we're looking at the ground here just to make sure we get something that looks relatively good. We're gonna be basically eyeballing it here while we're adjusting these settings, just to get something that looks relatively nice and organic. So let's go to the amplitude. So this is gonna determine how intense. So we're gonna keep it as it is. 1 is good because we wanna see nice blending between them. And then threshold. This is we're gonna start also adjusting how much of this blend gonna be occurring. So we don't wanna have it like all grass. We wanna have a nice blend here. So something around 102, like maybe something like this, 117. That's pretty good. And then let's go back to the ratio, and then let's look at the ratio. Let's change it around. There's no really like hard numbers here, just whatever like kind of looks nice and give this organic motion, organic results. And I like when we reach around like 900, you can start to get this really nice kind of looking breakup in the variation here. So let's keep it around that. The frequency, we can adjust it a little bit also, so you can see here how much, but it's kind of affecting it too much. So let's undo and maybe just do like minor, really like minor, like 2.05 or something like that. Just a little bit. So this is, let me copy this and show you before. So like 2 was like this, 2.05. It's kind of nice, like variation, but we don't want to change it like too much. These level min and max, we can leave them. It's just add like lots of noise and things like that. We don't want to do that. Just want to keep it clean. And then let's keep going down the lists, and then this bias, we can change that. We can play around with it. It's just gonna like increase how you see how this like really soft blending when we go on the minus, and then when we go on like positive, we can start to get like more intense kind of look. So I like kind of like that. So let's keep it around like 560 something. So if we don't want to go all the way to 1 because it start to get really intense, so we can tone it down. Let's see, maybe something like this. So it should be good. So we can zoom in. So we start to see like a nice detail of these textures start to show up. And now it still have the repetitive feeling, but when we start to zoom in more, eventually it will go away. You know, so we don't need to bother too much with this, because we're not gonna be really like showing it from this distance, because that's really high. We're gonna be like much closer to the ground between the trees and the grass. So this way we're gonna have a more realistic result. Okay, so I think with this fractal we're kind of done. Like we don't need to do any more things in it here. And then now let's start to do just quick renders and see like what's look like when we render. So let me close the Hypershade. And then now if we render using Arnold, as you guys know, it's not gonna render anything because we don't have any light. So let's quickly create a light. Let's create a directional light, and let's just scale it. This is just for so we can see it. It's not gonna actually affect the result of it. So you can press 7 if you want to see the light direction. So we're just gonna make a basic light for now. We're gonna be using a totally different lighting setup later on, but for now just let's look at this one, and then let's hit render. Okay, so it's done rendering, and you can see there's lots of grass going on in here. So let's change that. First let's increase this light. It's really weak, and maybe let's adjust the angle a little bit, and let's do another render. Okay, so let's it's interesting, it's not showing exactly how this terrain looks like. So let's go back to the Hypershade and work on that. Okay, let's select the ground here, and let's click on alpha luminance here, and let's go back to this green that grass, and let's click on alpha luminance. Just let me test, and let's make sure we click on alpha luminance here, and then let's test if that's gonna solve the problem or not. So let's go back here, let's click save, and then let's render. Okay, so obviously it didn't fix it, and so let's go back to this UVs, and then let's start changing them, toning it down, because as you can see here, they're really too much. We can't really see much detail. So let's tone them down, because it seems like Maya is not giving us the correct feedback between the viewport and the actual render. So let's adjust that. So let's go back to this ground texture, and let's tone it down, like make it like 20 by 20. Okay, and then let's go back to the dirt ground, and then let's change that. Let's make the ground more prominent, like something around 12. That's gonna scale it much bigger, but let's render and see what we got. Okay, as you can see, completely there's no like effect at all in the render view. So let's keep digging and really find out what's going on in here. Let's click alpha luminance in the fractal itself, and let's see if this actually gonna do difference into our render. So let's render. Okay, so now the problem is solved. So you can see, guys, this is actually really good that it happened, and I just want to show this way I can show you sometimes what kind of issues we might have with Maya, and then how to fix it. So alpha luminance is really important when it's come to using alpha into combining and mixing different textures. So make sure always using alpha as luminance is always checked on when you're dealing with anything that's gonna have opacity or some kind of like combination between texture using another texture. So this thing is good that it's happened, and you can see it didn't take that a long time at all to really solve the problem. And I just wanted to show you guys step by step how I would approach an issue that will come up, and will always come up issues when you're working with Maya. I'm sure you know that, guys. And then this way how you can solve it, you basically just go through the texture files, go through like all the things you have, and just make sure you test things. You check if the alpha luminance is the reason, or if it's not the alpha luminance is the reason. But most of the time with anything comes to like mixing using an alpha channel, or like basically using like an alpha mask to be more accurate, you're gonna see that alpha luminance is really important for Maya in order to process that. So I'm glad this issue come up, and so this way you can know, guys, how to fix it. And now we have more an accurate presentation to our scene. I'm gonna leave this textures as it is for now. I don't wanna change how the repetitive of the UVs, because I like it how it looks right now. We're gonna change that later on once we progress more. But for now, let's keep going with the shader, and then let's do the last tweaks on it before we move to the next video. Okay, so now we have Hypershade, and we almost finish up our ground shader here. So let's select the ground, and let's rename it ground. So this way we have consistent naming. And for the specular, as you can see from the render, there is like pretty high specular here, and we don't want to have too much. The ground usually is not that reflective, so let's tone it down to 0.01. So it's really like minimum. And then let's scroll down here to under geometry, and then here let's create our bump map, and then let's click on it, and let's go to file, and then in this file let's just click on the bump value, and then image name here, let's click on it, and then let's select our dirt ground bump. Okay, so you can see this bump map is really intense, so we want to tone it down a lot. So let's select the bump here node. Just take a little bit time to load. Okay, and then this bump depth, that's basically the strength of the bump map. We want to make it like really low. We don't want it to be like too intense or anything like that. So if we go like 0.1, let's zoom in here so we can see the result. And also what we want to do is we want to like match the bump map here. The UV now is really big, so we want to match it maybe with the grass or with that dirt ground itself. So let's start with the dirt ground, so it's 12. You can always experiment with these settings and like try to find what's the one that make more sense and will work for you. So now we have it like this, around 12, and then you can see how intense it is. So let's tone it down even further. Let's 0.010. You know, when it's come to bump map, you really need to be subtle with it. So let's grab something like this, and then let's render and see. Okay, so this is pretty good. Let's save, and let's actually delete all these other ones. Let's save, and then maybe we can increase it a little bit more. So let's go like 50. Let's try 50 and then see how it looks like. So on the viewport looks pretty intense, but let's see in the render. So we already saved, and then let's render. Okay, so let's check before and after. Oh, one thing is very important when it's come to bump map that I forgot to add, and I'm gonna show you guys, is you change the color space from sRGB to raw. That's something Arnold not required to do, and that's gonna influence the bump map. So what I was doing before, I forgot to change the sRGB, and that's why we wasn't getting really any much difference in the bump map. So let's now render after we change it to raw, and then let's see what kind of result we get. Okay, so let's save this image, and then let's go to the bump value, and then let's change that to like let's say 500, and then let's render. Okay, so you can see, you know, the bump map is actually affecting, but it's not that much difference. But you can see there is an effect of the bump map, so we can change that. Let's say if we change the UVs on the bump map. Let's change that to, let's match it to the grass. So 20. Let's change that to 20. And this one also 20. And then let's see the bump itself. Let's double check the file. It's still raw. And then let's go to the bump and then let's change it to 1. And then let's see how much difference it's gonna make. Okay, so you can see now we have more bumps like everywhere. They're not crazy intense because we don't want them to be crazy intense, because with the bump map we want it to be like subtle, and I could tone it down later on even more because we don't want the bump map to be like intense. And later on we're gonna keep developing this shader, improving it along the way when we start adding the grass, the trees, the bushes, and also like the lighting, the final lighting. That's all gonna influence this, but for now we're just gonna do it rough. And it's nice we start to get this nice variation of that the grass itself, and also the leaves and the rocks and all these other elements. So this is a good way to finish this video here for the shader. And then in the next videos we're gonna keep going and working with the other parts of the scene and building it up together. So in the next video we're gonna start importing the trees, and then scattering the trees and create the camera animation, just to start to get an idea of how this motion gonna work, and then keep going from there. So we'll see you in the next video.